What's going on, everyone? I'm just a typical, average American here today to attempt the Canadian citizenship test. You know, I might not know everything about Canada, but I think by now I've learned a thing or two. So today I thought it'd be fun to try this Canadian citizenship test, which is exactly like the actual test you would get to become a full Canadian citizen. So if we take a look here at the instructions, you have to answer at least 15 out of 20 questions. 75% correct is required to pass this practice test in order for me to become an honorary Canadian, at least. I need 15 out of 20. Let's take a look. Let's see exactly how well I'm going to do on this. Starting with question 1, which of the following is Canada's largest producer of hydroelectricity? What is this category even? Like the Canadian economy? Hydroelectricity? Is this what these questions are going to be like? I don't know. Can I think of this logically? Canada's largest producer of hydroelectricity would probably be a very populated, very large province like Ontario? Could it be B? Oh, it says I'm allowed to skip the question. Can I just skip all these, all 20 questions and just get to the end? Will that technically pass me? Probably not. Ontario? Largest producer of hydroelectricity? Seems right. This is hydroelectricity, like water powered? There's a lake in Ontario. That's a good sign. I'm just gonna go with Ontario. Is this gonna tell me if I'm right or wrong? It is, and I'm immediately wrong. I was wondering if it was gonna tell me at the very end how I did, but now I have the burden of knowing that I don't know anything about Ontario or Quebec in terms of hydroelectricity. Quebec, largest producer of hydroelectricity. Okay, let's keep going. Not a good start. I can only get 5 questions wrong in order to pass this. That's kind of scary. I gotta take that out of my mind and be optimistic here. In 1608, Champlain built a fortress in which city? Champlain? Champlain. Who is Champlain? I know a little bit about Canadian history, don't get me wrong, but we're just going on like a one name basis. It's not even like 2 names, it's like Champlain. It's like Beyonce or something. Is this person only have one name? Like Prince or something? 1608, Champlain. That sounds French to me for some reason. So maybe it's Quebec City or Montreal. Oh man. I'm gonna go with Quebec City. Because from what I remember, Quebec City, it looks sort of European, kind of old and historical. Maybe a fortress or 2? Please? Yes! Ha-ha! Okay, I think that was absolutely needed to get back on track here. Okay, that was a question I didn't really know. I just used like logic in a way, and it worked. I can be logical. Go figure. Number 3, when did the Second World War begin? When did the Second World War begin? I don't know exactly. Oh my. And look at these dates. Man, come on. 1940, 1941, or 1939 or 38. These years are all next to each other. The Second World War is a big deal for the world, and that includes American history, so I should know this. But I don't. I'm going to go with 1939. Please, please. Yeah. Wow. I don't know why. Man, I gotta be honest, that was partly, like, maybe part of my brain knew that, but it was also partly luck. I gotta be honest there. I can't take credit for that. It was 1939. Something about that number sounded right to me. Maybe I'm smarter than I thought. Maybe I don't have control over what facts are stored in my brain, but in times of need and desperation, I can get them out in order to pass the Canadian citizenship test, at least. In 1604, man, this is all history questions so far, except the hydroelectricity one. 1604, who began settling in the region now called the Maritime Provinces. I watched a Canadian Heritage Minute about this. So I'm pretty sure it's Vikings. But there's heritage minutes that are on Acadians as well. Certainly Aboriginal, Inuit, like indigenous Canadians could have been in the Maritime Provinces. But I think it's Vikings, because I remember that being strange. There were definitely Vikings. There were definitely Vikings somewhere in some part of Canada. I remember that as like a fun fact. But Acadians, I've heard that name. I don't think I've really learned about Acadians in Canada. So, I don't know. I don't think there was any way I was going to get that if it wasn't Vikings. Vikings just sounded so cool. I wanted it to be Vikings. That's two incorrect. So this is not a great pace so far. I'm like 50%. I can only get three more wrong. That's kind of scary. Canada started its own honor system with the Order of Canada in... How? How is anybody becoming a Canadian citizen with questions like this? I mean, I didn't get the study guide or anything for this. These questions are crazy. Canada started its own honor system? I've never heard of the Order of Canada. When would they have started it in Canada? Like a long time ago? Maybe all the way in 1937? Is that sort of closer to the actual founding and creation of Canada as we know it? I'm going to go with the really, really old one. No, 1967, not even that long ago. Its own honor system. I don't know anything about that. Man, that's a tough one. Gosh, I really need these questions to lighten up a little bit. Like, I guess it makes sense. Like, these are really hard. Like, if you pass this test, you deserve to become a Canadian citizen. Until which date did the federal government force Aboriginal students to assimilate them into mainstream Canadian culture? I know about the residential schools, is it? And the forcing of Aboriginal students, assimilating Aboriginal children into Canadian culture. I learned about that a little bit in a video a while ago. Until when did they force them to do that? How recently? Certainly not all the way to the 2000s. It's 1970 or 1980. I'm going to say 1970. But this could be wrong. It was 1980. I thought it could be up to the 1980s. Dang, these are hard. Is that 4 wrong already? Gosh, we need a bit of a miracle here. This I am in dire straits. Question 7. Which act defines the responsibilities of the federal and provincial government? Ooh. So finally, this is kind of a historical question, sort of a legal question. It's like asking a Canadian to answer a question on, like, the American Constitution or Bill of Rights or something. It'd be very difficult. And to be honest, most Americans couldn't answer, like, questions like this about America. Do Canadians out there, do you actually know the answers to these questions? These are really hard. This is to become a Canadian citizen. Do most Canadian citizens know this stuff? This is really freaking hard. What's the act that defines responsibilities of the federal and provincial government? British North America Act, Constitutional Act, both A and B. Come on! Really? Both A and B? We're doing that now? That's what we're doing here? Okay, the double answers. The Constitutional Act of 1997. So an act that defined the responsibilities of the federal government, you'd think that would have happened a while ago. Maybe it's B. British North America Act. I'm going to go with B. It's a long time ago. It has Constitution in the name. It's A and B. That's cruel. That is so cruel to make it the answer both A and B, 2 answers. Okay, we're officially at 5. We're officially at 5 wrong. I need to go perfect from here on out in order to pass this test. So stay tuned to see if that happens. The group of nurses who served in the Royal Canadian Army Medical Corps was called the group of nurses. I feel like there was a Canadian Heritage Minute. I watch a lot of Canadian Heritage Minutes. It's a series I do. So I actually know some of these topics a little bit, like the nurses in the Royal Canadian Army. I feel like I learned about that recently. I don't remember them being called birds. If they were called birds, would they be white birds or red birds? Or blue? I almost want to say white. Like, I feel like they could have been wearing white. Red is more synonymous with Canada, the color red, like the flag. Purple, I have no idea. Total blank. I'm going with white, I guess. Blue, part of me sort of thought blue, but I thought I would have remembered like a color like blue. White I associate with healthcare, I guess, and nurses. So that's officially 6 wrong. Now we're just seeing how hard this test is. We're seeing maybe I'm going to get 15 wrong and 5 correct rather than 5 wrong and 15 correct. Question 9, municipal governments usually have a council that passes laws, okay? These laws only affect the local community and are called local law? Or are they bylaws? That's like a lawyery thing. I've heard of bylaws, like in corporations or something. Local laws. The council passes laws that are for the local community, so they're local laws. No, they're not. They're bylaws. This is crazy. This is really hard. Like, if you didn't study for this exam, there's no way you're passing this. I'm here to say that. I'm the guinea pig. If you come in here unprepared, you are not going to become a Canadian citizen, that's for sure. When do the elections for the members of the House of Commons take place? Oh, elections for the House of Commons. I think it's every 6 years, because I remember thinking it's like a surprisingly long amount of time. Members for the House of Commons. Oh, man. Or is it 3? Or is it 5? I thought, man, I haven't learned about this in a very long time. I did some reaction to Canadian government a long time ago. I'm going to say 6 years because I feel like it was a long time. It was 4 years. 4 years? I'm surprised I didn't remember that one. Because here in the United States, like our president serves for 4 years. I could have remembered it that way. 4 years, not 6 years. Okay. That's the House of Commons members. Let's keep going. This literally at this point, it's just like, how many can I get correct? And I'm just curious how hard this test is, really. It's obviously very, very, very hard for me at this, like, 8 out of 10 wrong, or 2 out of 10 correct so far. Question 11, when did Canada enact free trade with the United States? Oh no, this has to do with the United States. That makes me feel guilty, like I should know this. You know what else about this test, now that I think of it? There are so many questions about knowing a specific year, a specific date. I wasn't anticipating that. That's very hard. Free trade with the United States. When would they have done that? I think, would it be all the way back in 1968? Canada and the United States have been friendly for a very, very long time. Yeah, I would say 68. I'd be surprised if it was any sooner. It's a little more recent. 1988? I'm surprised it was that recently that we did like a free trade agreement with Canada and the United States. I'm a little surprised about that. All right, let's keep going. I'm numb at this point. I'm numb. It doesn't even matter. These questions can't hurt me anymore. When you've only got 2 correct out of 11, you just stop caring. When was the Bank of Canada established? No way. There's no, like, Canadians, please, sympathize with me. There's no way that most Canadians know when the Bank of Canada was established. Do you? Do they teach this to you in school? Bank of Canada? Look at these years! They're all next to each other. 35, 1936, 33, 1934. 1934, because we haven't had D be the answer in a while. Did anyone else used to do their... That's right. It worked. Is that the strategy I need to be doing? Is that what I should have been doing this whole time? That's correct. Wow. Okay. I was saying that, did anyone else, when you were doing a multiple choice question in school, just start answering questions like, oh, the answer hasn't been A in a while. I'll just go with A. That literally works sometimes. Okay. That's kind of embarrassing. That's a third of my correct answers. Well, one of my other answers was kind of a guess as well. Like, most of my correct answers have been guesses, which statistically, if I'm guessing and there's 4 answers, I would be at 3 out of 12. Correct. 1/4 of the answers correct if I'm just guessing. And that's what I'm at right now. I could have literally just been guessing with a blindfold on, and statistically, I would be at 3 out of 12. And that's what I'm at. Oh no. How many territories does Canada consist of? How many territories, not provinces? 3. It's 3. Get out of here. I know this one. Why is this one so easy? Why? What? We got all the way to question 13. 13. For there to finally be a question that I think most people would know, or most Canadians. I even know this one. 3 territories. That's the first question that was actually, like, I knew it without even thinking. Oh my gosh, this is hard. Thousands of years ago, where did the ancestors of Aboriginal peoples migrate from? Thousands of years ago, where did the ancestors of Aboriginal people? What? Did they come from Asia? Aboriginal people. Where did they migrate from? Into Canada? How could they have gotten to Canada? Like, through Alaska? Like, on an ice bridge to Russia or something? Or is that what we're talking about? Where did they migrate from? Yeah. How else could they get to Canada? Like, from Asia? Yeah. Asia, through Russia, through Alaska to Canada? That could work. Africa. How do you get from Africa to Canada? Or Korea to Canada? India to Canada? I mean, it's possible. These are possible. I'm going to say Asia? Yeah, Asia. Okay. All right. That's making me very, like, second guess myself. Okay. All right. We're finally starting to get on a roll here. Kind of respectable. Not really. Is that optimistic to say we're kind of respectable here at 5 out of 14 correct so far? Okay. I was hoping to actually pass this test. Seriously. You need a 15 correct out of 20. Federal government takes responsibility for agriculture, national and international concerns, civil rights, or immigrations? Federal government? This is really confusing me. Wouldn't the Canadian federal government take responsibility for national and international concerns, for sure? Civil rights? You would think. Maybe that's like a provincial thing? Immigration? Immigration. I would think immigration. But national and international concerns. The federal government, that literally means like the nation, the national government, the federal government, right? Isn't that what that means? Yeah, national and international concerns. Is this like a trick question? Yes, that's right. Okay. It's not a trick question. It's just so obvious you don't think that's the answer. Especially after all these questions that were so difficult. Now they just throw a couple that are what they appear. The federal government does in fact take care of national concerns. It's like, is it really that easy? Number 16, out of the following people, who became the first head of a responsible Canadian government? Who was the first prime minister? Oh man, do Canadians know the first president of the United States? Do you know that? Because if so, I should know the first Canadian prime minister. Or is that not the first head of government in Canada? Georges Cartier? That sort of sounds familiar, actually. Oh, Fontaine. That sounds familiar. I don't know Taché or Lieutenant Fitzgibbon. Cartier or Fontaine? Cartier like jumped out to me, but Fontaine, it's Fontaine. That name also jumped out to me. Maybe that was the first Canadian Prime Minister, maybe not. I think I've heard that name before. It jumped out to me. All right, number 17, almost done here. The government ministers, along with prime ministers, are called the Senate, the Cabinet, the table. What? The government, along with the prime ministers. No, sorry, the government ministers and the prime ministers. I've heard of prime ministers. Wait, there's multiple? Wait a minute. Prime ministers? Maybe that's like the prime ministers of the provinces. Anyway, there's government ministers. I didn't know that. And there's prime minister, maybe ministers. And together, they are the Senate? It might be the Senate. I don't... Is it the cabinet? The United States has a cabinet. That's the president and a lot of his secretaries and chosen associates. The ruler. No, not quite, not quite. And the table, like the high table, like some kind of fantasy movie. Senate. Does Canada have a Senate? I'm going to go with the cabinet. I'm going to go with the cabinet. Okay, nice. Because I was just thinking, I don't remember a Canadian Senate. Maybe there is one, but I don't remember that. Cabinet, I think I've heard of. Number 18, who was the first woman to practice medicine in Canada? This sounds a lot like it would be a heritage minute. First woman to practice medicine in Canada? Woman, Sir Robert Borden? Isn't that a man? Agnes MacPhail, that sounds like a woman. Dr. Emily Stowe, that's a doctor. Wouldn't they practice medicine? Or Therese Casgrain? I'm going to go with Dr. Emily Stowe. I feel like that's too obvious because it has doctor in the name. What? Why? Huh? Nothing makes sense anymore. Why do they do this on this exam? Like, this is the only answer with doctor in it, and they're asking about the first woman to practice medicine. It's just so obvious. It makes you question, is that not the answer? Because that seems too obvious. I don't know. Maybe I need to think a little simpler. I need to not complicate this so much. 19. In which year were Aboriginals granted the right to vote? Well, we learned about the Aboriginal, like, residential schools, forced schooling, assimilation. That was like up until 1970 or something. So maybe that's when they got the right to vote as well? Maybe 1970? 1960. It was a little further back. Okay, there's no way. There's no way I was going to know that one. 1960 granted the right to vote. Okay, and finally, we've come to the end. 20, question 20. Through habeas corpus, we're getting very legal here. Through habeas corpus, a person can challenge unlawful detention by the state. It is derived from which law? Habeas corpus is derived from which law? Unlawful detention. German common law, English common law. You'd think it'd be English common law. Habeas corpus sounds like Latin or something. Or Italian? No, right? French? Could be French. Could be a French-Canadian thing. Habeas corpus is an American thing as well. I've heard of this phrase. It's a legal phrase. Maybe it's some other language, but I'm going to go with English. It sure doesn't sound English. Habeas corpus. It is English. All right, whatever. I'm not questioning it. You know what? I'm going to continue here to the end. We kind of had, like, I was not expecting this to pop up. Right as I was about to say, we kind of had, like, a resurgence there in the back half of the test. We kind of went on a streak. At one point, I had 3 questions correct. By the end, I almost got half correct. I got 9 out of 20. Why do they have to have such a giant red fail box pop up? That's funny. Result. Good try. Keep learning until you really understand the Canadian theory and are able to pass these mock tests consistently. Wow, and then you can go over your answers. I'm not. I'm going to take a break. That was a gauntlet. That was an ordeal. I actually went into this kind of confidently. Like, truthfully, I spend a decent amount of time here on this channel learning about Canada and Canadian culture. Yet, even now to this day, 9 out of 20 correct on the Canadian citizenship test. Those questions were a lot harder than I thought. A lot of dates, a lot of history. I'd be fascinated to know how Canadians do on the Canadian citizenship test, like, because that was hard. I'm kind of proud I even got 9 out of 20, but there you go. I thought that'd be a lot of fun, and although it was an utter fail, I did have fun, and I learned something along the way, so I enjoyed this. Anyway, if you enjoyed this as well, feel free to give this video a like, or leave a comment with your thoughts on this test or any of the questions or anything like that would be very fun. And if you're interested in more videos like this, me reacting to Canada and Canadian culture and learning things about Canada for the first time, feel free to subscribe for more. And until then, thanks for watching and see you next time.